Once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested in a raid this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Welcome to the DT Show. Today, I see some comments going on, so I'll address those comments. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Appreciate everybody here. Please hit that like, please hit that subscribe button. What we're going to be talking about today is I've had a couple of people comment in the comment section certain things. And one of the most common comments that I get is is that the PCA is lies, that the PCA is irrelevant, that the PCA is no good, they're not going to use it, or a bunch of stuff, right? And so what I wanted to do is go into a little bit of a conversation I had with somebody who was saying these things and kind of discuss what it is actually that's being said and what's going on. I know some folks are saying, hey, there was the knife, the K-bar was found and there was some DNA. And I saw that a long time ago. In my opinion, it sounded like they were referring to the sheath. There's some typos and stuff that is not included here. I hope they found it. If they did, that'd be slam dunk, but I'm not necessarily sure that they do. All righty. So let's get into this. Let's get into the topic. Hit that like, subscribe. You know what to do. All right. Okay. And here it is. So I'll blow it up and we'll answer, Miss Karen's information or her question as we go along. So I included all of her comments. I didn't include mine because obviously I'm going to go through it with you guys. So with Karen, she says the PCA has lies in it. The FBI expert on the model of the car said it was a 2011 to 2013 Elantra. It was Payne that changed it to include up to 2016 model, which would include a 2015, which BK had. The FBI. So let's stop it right there. Let's go to the PCA. So the PCA states, after reviewing numerous observations of suspect vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed that the suspect vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 13 Elantra. Upon further review, he, not Detective Payne, but the original forensic examiner, indicated it could also be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, they were looking for a 2011, 2013 Elantra. So what? Who cares? They were looking for a 2019 Sentra at one point, and they were looking at other cars. Now, the one thing that is going to end up being it's going to support the prosecution on this case is the fact that they themselves, I got distracted by one of the comments. So, well, anywho. Now, where was I? Well, so I'll just start over a little bit. So she was asking is, when did it change? Oh, there we go. I remember now. It doesn't matter what they thought when. It's not like the information is going to change, right? It's not like the vehicle is going to morph from a 2011 to a 2013 in the videos that they have to a 2015 to 16 in the same videos later. Those things, that's not impossible. I mean, those things aren't possible. And so with that being said, it doesn't matter what they thought at one point. It's what do they know now? Can Bryan Kohberger's defense team say for a fact that that is a 2011 to 13 Hyundai Elantra, that law enforcement was right the first time. Well, it doesn't seem like they're getting a lot of experts in that area, right? For instance, I'm seeing them argue the years here because they're trying to say that Bryan Kohberger's car, or they changed their mind about the car because they got Bryan Kohberger's name. There's not really any indication that they're arguing that is not the right car. I'm not seeing any experts or any of those type of things. That's still early, and we may see those, but to this point, it doesn't seem like their argument is saying that it's not a 2015, that it's still a 2011 to 13, and their argument is, well, you used the IGG to find out who he was, and then from there, that's when you looked up his car, and that's when you knew. It's not really saying that it's not his car. They're just arguing how they got to his car. So at the end of the day, who cares what they thought in the past? It's what do they know now? What can they prove now? And if Bryan Kohberger had an expert that can go up there and say, no, this is for a fact a 2011 or 2013 Hyundai Elantra, then you have an argument that kind of proves innocence, supposedly, right? Possibly. So let's carry on with her questions. She goes on to say the FBI was not comfortable in changing the year to 2016. So a little bit later, she's going to tell me that all of my stuff is based off of opinion and not fact or no evidence. I assure you, she wasn't part of that FBI war room and knew that they weren't comfortable putting that out. But here's going to be the biggest thing that saves the prosecution here, and I think that's where I was at last time, is the fact that they went out and documented Bryan Kohberger's car before they knew Bryan Kohberger. So that happened on November 25th. That tells us that indeed what the search was for was cars that were similar to a 2011 to 2013 Elantra, and to look for all these four-door small compact cars that are white in color that could be anything similar to a 2011 to 13 Elantra. Because if they went out there, because remember, in the PCA, it states that one of the officers pulls it up, and after he pulls it up, then he sends another officer to go and check it out. And so it's not like he's driving around and accidentally finds it. They had a purpose to go and look at it. There was probably a list of many potential cars, or a long list of cars that were potentially a 2011 to 13 Elantra or something similar. And the mere fact that they went and documented that tells you and tells everybody else that they weren't just honing in on a 2011 or 13 Elantra, that they were unsure at that time to also open it up to other vehicles, which included Bryan Kohberger's. It is what it is. All right. The evidence, the FBI was exculpatory evidence. Okay. Payne changed it. Why? Payne didn't change it. It was the forensic examiner, because they found out Bryan Kohberger drove a 2015 Elantra. But that's the thing. Does it matter? Right? Even if that's the case, they'll say, hey, they're going to go back to the forensic examiner and say, hey, we have a suspect. His DNA matches the DNA on the sheath. Could this be a 2015 Elantra? And then he's going to go back and review it. And he's like, you know what? This could be a 2015 Elantra. I cannot, exclude this vehicle. And they still kept in 2011 to 13. So they said 2011 to 2016, which means to me, they probably don't have the best picture of the car. If I'm being completely honest, they probably have some side shots based off of some ring cameras because, well, most ring cameras are facing out of the front of the house, facing towards the street. So what you're going to get profile views of the vehicle. And so what this tells me is there's probably not something that's real clear and cut that's going to show the differences between an 11 and a 16. All right. And it says the evidence, the FBI. Okay. The car seen on video was not BK's car, with a capital not. I don't get why she thinks that. Like I'm open to the possibility that there could be another vehicle, but this one is like, no, there's no way this is Bryan Kohberger's without any evidence or backing up. Just the mere fact that they decided they didn't figure out that it could have been a 2015 until after they got Bryan Kohberger's name. That doesn't change anything. It's not like, all right, let's go back to the video evidence and make it look different and edit this out and hope nobody notices, including the defense team. It's kind of ridiculous. All righty, so let's see. Who discovered the knife sheath on the second time in MM's bedroom? It was Payne. Who said it was the second time? Let's see. Let's pull back the. So this is Payne's. This is the probable cause affidavit for Brett Payne, and it doesn't say that this was his second attempt here at the house. All right. Now, somebody pointed him in the direction probably of what's in the house and what's going on. That's probably your forensic lead. Now, one of the things that I have seen multiple times, because this has nowhere in here that this says, hey, this was the second time that Payne was here. Nothing like that whatsoever. And so I have no idea where they think that this was Payne's second time around. All right, so it says, who discovered the knife sheath on the second time in MM's room? I think it was discovered the first time by forensics. The DNA was transferred / touch DNA, meaning the DNA found on the snap minuscule skin scales was put there by a secondary source. No, it was actually a single source DNA, single source. There was no secondary source. You know, there's one way you can explain single source, and that is by actually touching the item. That is how you explain single source. I mean, a single source DNA. You know, your theory here doesn't make any sense. That because it was found on the snap, that it automatically is put on by somebody else. I think I've said it multiple times. Do you know how the most common way to get touch DNA on a surface? It's by touching it. And the most common way to get a single source DNA on a surface is by the person touching it. Now, if there was a mixture of DNA in that, like a mixture of touch DNA or skin cells in there, things of that nature, then okay, maybe a mixture of DNA could be something that was put there or transported by other means. But that's crazy. Not from the person whose DNA found on it. I don't understand what you mean by that. The DNA is transfer touch DNA, meaning the DNA found on the sheath was put there by a secondary source. That's not, you know, there's a possibility that he tried to clean it and he didn't clean everything. Not from the person whose DNA was found on it. In other words, it doesn't prove BK was at the residence. But here's the thing. There's so much stuff that proves Bryan Kohberger was there. And it comes down to his phone not being on, right? Granted, you have to look at the whole picture, right? You can't just look at two components of it and say, it doesn't make sense. It don't make sense. Obviously, you're not looking at the whole picture, right? It's like a math component. I've told it many times. I'll say 10 plus 10 plus 5 plus 5 is 30. And then I'll get a Kohberger coming in and say, no, because 10 plus 5 is 15. And I'm like, yeah, you're forgetting the other 10 and 5. And they're like, no, 10 plus 5 is 15. There's holes. This is exactly it. So when you look at all the components, Bryan Kohberger being out at the same time that a mass murderer or mass murderer is about to commit a quadruple homicide. He's out and about during that same exact time in the weird late hours and the early morning hours on a Sunday. Right? He has his phone turned off during the specific time that the crime is happening. There are cameras in the area that capture a vehicle matching his car's description all the way down to the front license plate. They have a witness inside of the house that sees somebody, a man walking in and out that doesn't exclude Bryan Kohberger. And finally, you have his DNA on an item that the killer brought in with only his DNA. Now, I think that if maybe we saw his DNA and it was a mixture of DNA and it was like on something that was common, like a door handle or a doorknob or the railing, okay, that might be transferred by somebody else, right? There's more than one source, it's mixed, and it's on a common thing that somebody touches. This was inside of the button snap. Inside the button snap. So it's not like, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, there's so much blood. Well, the sheath was made out of leather. That's waterproof or resistant. And it was facing downward and probably pressed up against. So That may be one of the areas there wasn't a lot of contamination or by victims' DNA. And then the one spot you were able to test, you got Bryan Kohberger's single source DNA. I don't know. Maybe there was more DNA there. We just didn't know about it. All right. So let's see. But yeah, I mean, if you're, and the other thing is too, when would they have planted his DNA? Are you saying that Brett Payne showed up early, like at 12? They decided at that moment that they're not going to figure this out. So we have to blame somebody. We're not going to figure it out. So we have to blame somebody between noon and 4 because they couldn't figure it out. So they had 4 hours where they said, hey, that's too long. We don't know who it is. We got to go get a patsy. And they choose somebody from the nearby town who's a PhD student. That how do they even know who he is? Please don't tell me you're that one person. This might be the same person that told me that Brett Payne and Bryan Kohberger hung out after their interview and they got drunk around a fire or something like that. And that's how they got his DNA. Bryan Kohberger had applied for the Pullman Police Department, not Moscow Police Department. And there's so many other, it's ridiculous how much you have to go into to say that Bryan Kohberger is quote unquote innocent. All right, let's see. The DNA is transfer DNA coming from another person who had touched the DNA. So there would be there would be a mixed DNA. It's not a single source, dude or ma'am. Leaving it on the snap, that can happen accidentally or intentionally. I would question Payne's findings, finding the sheath by MM later after allegedly having been in the room earlier. When was he in the room earlier? You see, again, like there's no sense. You have to add things into this so that Bryan Kohberger can somewhat seem, I mean, it's as far-fetched as it is, so that you can, in your mind, pretend that there's some sort of reasonable doubt here, but there ain't. The case in the PCA has real problems. The problem is the PCA doesn't have to be the burden of beyond reasonable doubt. I think a lot of people are confusing, including this lady. What is supposed to be on the PCA? It's just the probable cause. It's just the information to say, hey, you have a warrant to arrest this guy, or you have a warrant to search things, or whatever the case may be. It's only about that moment so that you can build a case, right? Because the PCA had Bryan Kohberger's dad's DNA. Do you think that that's going to come out in trial? Well, no, it's not, because they have Bryan Kohberger's DNA that they swabbed. And that was a match by 8 octillion to 1 being Bryan Kohberger. I don't get it. And then I would question Payne's. Okay, then it says the Elantra at the cannabis shop is not BK's. Well, if I remember correctly, Cy Ray said that, that was what Ann Taylor said that she was going to prove, and that her expert was going to say. He testified. I don't remember him ever saying that. He did not actually. He never once said that the Elantra passing by the cannabis shop is not BK's. And guess what? Now the defense wants all that evidence thrown out. They don't want that in there. They don't want anything about BK's car being brought up. And so if they had, or also the cell phone records, which would include, right? That would include your expert witness that has exculpatory, and I put that in the biggest quotation marks ever in the world, but that would include his testimony. So what happened? He changed his mind. You don't have another expert, so you have to get it thrown out because nobody can say that Bryan Kohberger was not where the police say he was. Those are the things you should be really questioning. Instead of questioning the officer's intentions and this and that, question the guy who is alleged to have committed this crime and look at the evidence, and it's not very hard to figure out. It really isn't. I don't understand why some folks will look at this and say, you know what? There was this car in Oregon that was registered to some person in the state of Colorado, and the person that owned the 1122 King Road residence there's like a bunch of people that own it or whatever, and there's a guy on the board. He is some random guy completely separate from the other person that owns the Elantra. Let's be honest, if you're owning an investment company, you're probably driving some things that cost more than Elantra, but you have two different people from the same state. That's too much of a coincidence for these folks. Doesn't make any sense. Don't make any sense. The case and the PCA problems, the reasons for the Frank motions, inaccurate lies info on the copy and paste PCA. It's not accurate. They want the Frank's motions because what they're saying, and I brought this out like 6 months ago. I said the defense is going to try to argue that the law enforcement randomly found Bryan Kohberger's vehicle, and that's how everything ended up going in motion, because they can't use the IgG because the IgG is inadmissible. It's like a lie detector test. You can't use it. You can't use it for any PCAs. You can't use it in any warrants, which is why I've asked multiple times, like, all right, if they were to throw out the IgG, which is not even in the case right now, but if they were to throw it out, what evidence would be thrown out because of it? Like, what evidence used the IgG for the warrant to gather the other evidence? You hear a bunch of crickets. Nobody's willing to answer that because there's nothing. There's not one iota of anything that says that they use the IgG for something in any of the warrants, search warrants or anything else. They use the trash DNA that linked up to his dad on a legal pool. And so copy paste PCA. But does that make Bryan Kohberger innocent? Does any of these things make Bryan Kohberger innocent? These are all things that are trying to say, you know what, he might be guilty, but if you take out, his car, the searches of his car, the searches of his house, his phone activity, where he was, his location based on those phone activity. Because remember, there was more than just pings, and you have to understand that. I know that Miss Karen here may think that she's part of the case, but she's not. The PCA, as I mentioned before, is just the bare bones to get everything else. Like the phone pings. Who cares about those? Those were just to get the warrant to see. She even mentioned Gladiator and GPS. That's to get the warrants for those things because those are more accurate. Now, they're arguing from Bryan Kohberger's defense team as well. The grand jury didn't know that they had information that is potentially flawed because it's not very accurate. It could have been here. It could have been somewhere else. Okay. So what? This isn't proof beyond reasonable doubt. This is just to get the probable cause warrant. This is just to get the warrant for other pings and other locations which led to, once they got the DNA, to other things like his phone. Once they arrested him, they had to get his phone first. All right. They couldn't just get the GPS chip out of the air or whatever the case may have been. But they had to arrest him. They had to have a warrant for his personal cell phone so they can get those things. And they utilize this information that they had at the moment as bare means. Because you also have to remember, when it comes to a probable cause affidavit, you don't put your entire case. I've written several of them. You don't put your entire case. You put a lot of what you know and enough to say to a judge that, all right, this guy more than likely committed this crime and should be charged. And then there's a process when you get charged. That's the arresting process. But this is just to charge the man. This isn't so that he goes to trial or any of those things. The PCA is just to charge him. So who cares what might be in there? That's like the phone pings or the DNA pull from his dad's house. None of this stuff matters. All right. So why don't you go over the issues of the case and stop treating BK as if he's guilty? Because he is guilty. I've said it 100%. He's 100% guilty. There is nobody else involved. It is Bryan Kohberger. He will be found guilty. And, so let me rephrase this. He's not found guilty yet, but this POS committed these crimes. He 100% committed these crimes. So I will treat him as so that he committed these crimes because he did commit these crimes. Some folks need, I've used the analogy that 1 + 1 is 2, or 2 + 2 is 4. I can figure that out in my head. Some folks need to write it down. Some need to count their fingers. You know, for some of us, we can figure this out without having to go through absolutely everything, without having to everything be explained down to a T. You can figure this out pretty easily. Let's go to the next page. Why did you delete a person's comment to me and my reply back? There was no arguing, just civil discourse. Others say you delete their comments. Why aren't other opinions contrary to yours? Where are you trying to make BK look like a criminal? Because he is a criminal. Ted Bundy, really? Are you a psychologist? No, I'm not. So first and foremost, I don't have to make BK look like a criminal. He is a criminal. I don't have to do anything for him to look like one. Love is blind. And I've said this multiple times that, you know, when somebody's like in love, and it's not the first time. I mean, you have like the Ted Bundy groupies. You had the Richard Ramirez groupies. You know, all these people existed. This one's just a BK groupie. And so, I only delete, and I will say this, I will block you if you are rude and you are disrespectful and things of that nature to either myself or anybody else on the channel, or to anybody else in particular in the comment section. I don't stand for that. We're not in high school. You know, I'm a grown ass man. I would assume that you're a grown ass lady, and I would hope that there are grown ass individuals here that can figure out that they can talk to each other civilly. If you come in kind of hot, then you're gone. I didn't erase yours because you didn't come in being disrespectful. But let's go into it. So I actually told her, I was like, look, I don't even know what you're talking about when it comes to your other comments. Why would I delete their opinions if you are having a civil discourse and there was no arguing? That means that you guys weren't agreeing on something, right? So why would I erase the person's comments who agree with me? I don't get it. I don't get it. And I'm not saying that Bryan Kohberger is Ted Bundy, or that Bryan Kohberger is like he was trying to copycat Ted Bundy. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of similarities to the Ted Bundy case. Bryan Kohberger himself may have studied Ted Bundy and DeSales. I know that his professor, Kathleen Ramsland, had, I think, a couple of books on Ted Bundy. So I'm saying there's a lot of similarities there. I'm not talking about who he is as a person. Bryan Kohberger probably is not anything like Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy had charisma and charm. This guy, he looks like Frankenstein. And so it's the way he walks, the way he looks, sort of from his head shape. I'm not trying. Screw it. He's a POS. He doesn't talk much. He's no Ted Bundy. Anyways, no, I'm not a psychologist. There's just certain things that are very similar, including some of the things that Bryan Kohberger has written. You know, there are things that are documented that are out there, what he wrote and what he said about his own feelings and how he felt about others. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah. And then I go too far. You're going on about nothing anyone was speaking about. I wasn't saying why wasn't everyone in a small bedroom or why not this person, etc. The point is that Payne that decided to change the dates on the election to PCA. No, he didn't. I even questioned. I was like, have you even read the PCA? And then I put it in there in quotations, what was said. The FBI agent never agreed. It could have been up to 2016. My point is that it was the same person, Payne, who found the knife sheath that was confiscated. It wasn't even Payne. There were other officers there, forensic guys that were probably there just around the same time. Maybe it was Payne who discovered it, but so what? Like, who cares? Like, that's not uncommon that the first detective on scene discovers things. Like, come on. What did you expect? Somebody else to discover it? Someone else to discover that? Another person that's going to go in there and discover something else? It's not how it works. It's a small area. That's like when people were trying to say that, oh, hey, Blaker had a different probable cause or a different affidavit than Payne. He said that he had to be told that there was a knife sheath. It would. Why, if you could see it from the door? But that's not what the PCA says. The PCA does not say that, from when viewing from the door, the knife sheath is visible. It doesn't. It says that it is on Mogen's right side when viewed from the door, not that you can view it from the door. Meaning, and I'll give you an example. If I told somebody to go in through the back of my house and I had a bicycle or a ladder or something on the right side of my house facing from the back, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can see it from the back. It's just telling you the direction you have to go to get it. Because if you were standing in the front, that would be to the left side. So what that told me was that Mogen was probably laying on her side. But you have to have, you got to be able to connect some dots and understand what is being described. And if you're doing it with a closed mind, you're gonna like I said, to hammer everything's a nail. But sure. Alrighty, so let's see. Payne and later tested to have transferred DNA on it. People discover weapons that later test for DNA on it. I don't understand why that's weird. What is transfer DNA? It means the DNA got there by a secondary source. No, somebody can touch something. That's how you get touch DNA somewhere. Physically touching things. Like when you pick up a gas pump to get gas and get back in your car. Now, if somebody were to check for prints on your car or door and the steering wheel, you may have prints of the person or skin cells of dumped the gas before you. Right. But usually that's with a secondary source. This was single source DNA. This was not transferred. That's called transfer or touch DNA. See, this is the problem, right? She doesn't know what she's talking about. Clearly she doesn't. And she's probably watching and listening to a bunch of other channels where the creator doesn't know what they're talking about. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, they're just ignorant. I'm ignorant to things, I wouldn't go out and tell a heart surgeon that he's wrong about something. He's an expert. I'm not. I may want to get expert opinions to compare those, but I'm not going to get the opinions of the uninformed. It doesn't make any sense. That's like saying if you went to a doctor and the doctor told you have, some bad news, and you're like, all right, I don't really want to hear that news. So I'm going to go ask my neighbor who is a mechanic, my brother who's in the army, but he's not a medic. And I'm going to ask my son, because obviously he knows what's best for me. And you're going to take their opinions over the one that was the expert. And this is a clear indication of that you're listening to some people who are trying to explain things in such a manner to show that Bryan Kohberger is quote unquote innocent. And they're looking at it from that angle and you're buying it and it's not making you look good. All right. That type of DNA does not prove that BK was at the 1122 residence, period. People need to hear and understand that. There's lots of issues with this case. Again, you're also thinking that you know everything in the case. That's not the case. And yes, to the person who asked, there were numerous knives and sheaths at the residence and from the frats who partied there. But were they any of those that had the DNA? I mean, are any of theirs missing? Right? Any of them have no alibi like Bryan Kohberger? Any of them drive an Elantra without a front license plate like Bryan Kohberger? Any of them same height and weight and bushy eyebrows like Bryan Kohberger? You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, it's Idaho. There was a lot of people that had knives and stuff. It's not an uncommon thing in a rural area. I live in San Antonio, Texas. It's one of the biggest cities out here, and everybody got a knife here on them too. So what? It's not about that. It's all right. Did Bryan Kohberger purchase a knife that was similar? And he had a knife sheath and a K-bar knife that can't be found. And now you have the knife sheath found with his DNA on it in an area where, and on a day and night, at an unlikely hour, where he is driving his vehicle with his phone off. that matches the vehicle seen on camera during that specific time that he was out. Do any of those match this? Anybody else that has a knife match that? I don't think so. And for those that think that Bryan Kohberger was the only person that was ever looked into, that's bullcrap. That is, you have the person, whoever they ended up surreptitiously getting DNA from off of a cigarette butt. Remember that? That's what the defense brought up. Now, if that's true, that tells us that police were investigating other people. It wasn't just Bryan Kohberger. Now they could only fit Bryan Kohberger because he fits all the pieces because he did it. I don't understand. A lot of people will say he made so many mistakes. He took his own car. He took his phone and he turned it off and turned it on. He left witnesses. So you're surprised he got caught? Why? I don't get it. Like, you know what? This guy so obviously did it. There's so much evidence against him. There's so much proof. I think he's innocent. Oh my gosh. All right, let's see. I had asked her, I was like, so at this point I was asking her, I was like, hey, I think it was actually about the car, because she had mentioned something about the car. And I had told her at this point, hey, or this was the comment that she was responding. I was like, if they're trying to get rid of the car and the defense can prove that that's not Bryan Kohberger's car, let's just say that they do have a witness to say that's a 2011 or 13, but yet they want the car thrown out, right? You can't have the car in and compare it to what's on the videos and not look at anything else about the car, right? So you'd have to get those things thrown out. So if you're trying to prove that that's a different vehicle, why are you trying to throw it out? Wouldn't that be one of the defense's biggest, components to their case? I mean, that would include also the DNA, right? If there was no DNA or nothing found in the car, if you're throwing it out, I mean, those things, no DNA in the car. I can prove it's a 2011, 13 Elantra, and you want to throw those things out? I mean, those are the things that would be the best to his defense. I mean, by throwing them out, that would hurt the defense way more if those things were true. I don't think she understands that. And I'm not saying that she's incapable of understanding it. I'm saying that love is blind and people are emotional, things of that nature. Anyways, I'm not adding anything. Early on, I read that he went back to the rooms upstairs and saw something by MM's leg, partially under the leg, and comforter. So we don't know how he saw it, but he says he did. It doesn't mention in the PCA how he saw it. And I think you're referring to is that there was a document that I think somebody had mentioned that the knife sheath was partially under her leg. Again, Payne didn't say he could see it from the door, right? He said it was to Rogan's right side. Now, once it's seen, it has to be shown, right? Like you have to eventually collect it. You have to take pictures of it. You're going to want your lead detective to look at it. He's the detective that's going to see if there's anything noticeable that's out of place. You know what I mean? So I don't get where your question is or where you're going with this. And then he goes, and comforter. So I don't know how he saw it. I mean, eventually those things get pulled off. The comforter, the bodies eventually leave the room. So does the bed and everything else. Everything is bagged and tagged. But he says he did. They probably took pictures of it too. I know I heard this early on numerous times. He said it before they were leaving. Did he check the rooms before leaving? See, that's the other problem too. She's saying that she heard this and heard that. She's hearing from the wrong people, which is exactly what I said. I was like, that's might be your problem there, is you're hearing things from the wrong people and interpreting them wrong as well. And then say he saw it. So she's confusing Blaker's and Payne's, where Blaker said that he was later told that it was underneath the body of the victim. Now, a lot of people have argued why didn't Blaker see it? Well, we go back to what Payne said. It was on Mogen's right side when viewed from the door. And I mean, if it's on the right side of her and you're viewing it from the door, there's probably like a body blocking you. There's a reason why you can't see it. There's a reason why he didn't say. And from the door, I could see a knife sheath to Mogen's right side. I didn't say it that way. And so what probably means is that he didn't go in there. It's a small area. You don't want to contaminate things. You want as little as much possible of people inside there. So you're going to let your forensic team go in there. You're going to let the lead detective and any upper brass people, you know, if a captain, chief, any of those guys want to come in and actually take a look, then, you know, they'll get suited up and do so. But for the most part, you want to limit the amount of people that are there. That would include some random, you know, other detective. Only the main detective would go in there. And I think a lot of people are confusing the space here. This was a very small home. There was 3 stories, but the building itself, and it was crammed in, and things were very small in this house. Let's see. And then, and so she's also going based on things that she don't know or she can't figure out. And yet again, she kind of tells me that I go on opinion, but yet her entire arguments are on opinion. I know I heard this early on. Yeah, who cares what you hear? Like I said, if you're hearing it from the wrong people, you're going to be wrong too. I'm not sure the only one who heard it was the second time that he saw it or something and told the officer with him. It may be from the notes they took at the time they were there. So she don't even know what she's talking about. She don't even know what she's talking about. So that's going to be it on her conversation with me. And yeah, it's I don't understand. Oh, you know what? I may have forgotten the first part. Let's see. Oh, no, I said that part. Oh yeah, here's the other thing. So she goes, I'm sure many have seen the pics of the roommates and friends in the house playing around with different types of knives. She goes, I have seen them. Dylan Mortenson photos too. You're talking about the photoshopped ones that somebody made with her and a knife in her hand. There was something else where they were throwing knives or axes at something, but there's a lot of people in that area that have knives. But not all are implying any guilt on her. Not at all applying any guilt on her. Just that they've had many parties. So what? How do you get from parties to somebody committing a quadruple homicide without leaving much DNA behind? Allegedly. Maybe there's more now. It was known as a drug house. When even a taxi driver says that, it's known as a drug house. What taxi driver said that? Now, we had some people, even some folks that came up here and they were trying to claim that this was a drug house. And I listened to them because they were from the area. However, I was been able to debunk majority of what they've said, and I've brought it out and I've said it multiple times that these people right here, this is not true. This one ain't true and this one ain't true. One of them said that he was working earlier that day or whatever the case, found out that their shop don't even open until way after he said he was there, and so many other things. But it being a drug house. So the thought is what? Somebody went in there, drugged out, strung out, and was looking for drugs? Or do you think somebody flushed things down and now the real psycho drug dealers were like, no, we can't let this happen. It's ruining our business. So let's go in there and hack them up. Which doesn't make sense, right? Because like a lot of people keep saying this is a money grab, whether it's from the drug aspect or whether it's from, the investor in Colorado. It's always about the money. It's about the money. What money was gained from this? What money did the investors or the person that owned the property there, gain? What money did drug dealers gain from their best location in a place that has a lot of turnover, right? These girls are college girls. They're not living there for the rest of their lives. And so all you got to do is wait until they're out. Right now. So somebody say, oh, they may have been afraid they were going to narc or say something and something of that nature. Okay. But they downloaded their phones, and that includes the victim's phones. There was no, and this goes back a while. So did the drug dealer bring the geek squad with him and they go into their phones and completely delete everything, that any conversation they may have ever had, even of the good times or when they started meeting up or whatever the case may have been for any type of drug activity. No, good God. And then, so, money grab, none of that makes any sense. What makes sense is when you listen to the camera, or, well, you can't listen to it, but when you read about the sounds that are on the camera and you think about what it says, it picks up noises starting at 4:17 of whimpering, a thud, and the dog barking. It don't really say anything about hearing screams, kicking, or yelling, or any of those things. Now, the reason why they brought up the noise is because they want to be able to corroborate that this was the time of the murders, right? So if there was a scream or there was something that started earlier than that, they would have started with that as well on the PCA, because you want to be able to prove that this person was in that area during that specific time. So for them to say it started at 4:17 and this and that tells me that's probably around the time that he got finished in the third floor bedroom, walked into Kaylee's bedroom. I think that at that point, there's a good chance that Murphy saw him and started to bark, didn't recognize him. And if you can hear whimpers and thud and stuff like that from the second story, and you don't hear anything about what's going on the third story, it could have been really quiet ordeal there. Now, because even Dylan Mortenson's statements say that she was woken up what sounded like Kaylee playing with the dog. And so, it didn't sound like, and she didn't say it sounded like somebody was taking the life of somebody else. You know what I mean? And then, so Vicente Sheets, a Lyft driver, said in an interview he stopped dropping off students in that area due to a massive amount of drugs and alcohol. Vehicles was also getting hit with objects. So that doesn't mean that that's a drug house. What that means is that the people that were going in and out of there were party people. They would go in there, they would drink and this and that, and they probably left some things in his car. It doesn't mean that that place was a drug house. Completely different. And plus, he had stopped going there. When did he stop going there? Was that before or after? Because there used to be a group of dudes that lived there not too long ago, I believe. So I don't know. You tell me. All right, let's see. Okay, but yeah, and also the victims, all of them tested negative for any type of drug when it came to their toxicology report. That's not really something that would be, conclusive, or what's what I'm looking for. That's not usually something that indicates that there's drug users or drug party goers there. Now, is it possible that other people showed up with, things? Possibly. You can't say that that's not probable or possible. It's probably probable that happened. But where does that lead to the quadruple homicide, right? Usually, typically, if this was a drug-related event, that's pretty obvious. There was a quadruple homicide in California not too long after this happened, and police were able to notify everybody that it was cartel-related. It doesn't take much to figure it out. They're usually sending a message. It's usually pretty obvious, and it's not one of these, situations where it's super covert, going in there, not leaving much DNA and getting out. So yeah. Robert P, $2 super sticker. Thank you so much, Robert. We appreciate you. Drunk college kids throwing up in Uber. Imagine that, speaking for a friend. Yeah, exactly. Y'all who did. Yep. Absolutely right. And so what we hear from those cameras, I guess, to kind of go back around what I was saying, are sounds of somebody that meticulously went in there and took the lives of 4 people very quietly. We also know that there wasn't much DNA left behind at the time of Bryan Kohberger's, the PCA, at least, of his arrest. And the reason why I say we know that is because if they did, the DNA, if there was DNA underneath the fingernails or somewhere else, the skin that was blood or something else that can prove that he was, as Miss Karen had mentioned, something else that's a little bit more provable that he was inside the house. Because I do understand that touch DNA is the least used or effective or whatever you want to, not effective, but the least, what's the word I'm looking for? Where reliable, I guess. But it's 8-some octillion times Bryan Kohberger. But the reason why it's reliable is because it can be transferred. But it was single source DNA, right? And there's a lot of other things that points to Bryan Kohberger when it comes to it. But yeah. So let's see what else to say. They had rugs there, but of course there was probably a sheath easily seen in the residence the next day. But one sheath with no blood or bloody fluids found on the house, just one sheath placed by MM. See, that's the other thing. She's assuming that she knows that there was no blood on him. I mean, it's the same thing with the footprints, right? They assume that there's just one latent footprint, that there's nothing else there because it's not stated in the probable cause affidavit. But what these folks don't understand is that how do you get a latent footprint? Well, you have to step into something. And initially, especially if it's like blood, if it's a lot of blood that you're stepping into, if it's less blood, it doesn't take as much. But if you step into some blood, the first step that you put down is going to have more blood, are going to have the most blood. The second step after that's going to have less blood than the first one, because blood was left there on the first step. The third step is going to have less than the second, the fourth step, and so on to the point where you can't see it anymore. But what can you deduce from there? You can deduce where he started the walk and where he ended the walk. And the reason why this is important is because they're determining the time that Bryan Kohberger left that house and what time he was seen, or that Elantra was seen on Walenta Drive. And how can you do that? Because Dylan Mortenson says she saw somebody matching Bryan Kohberger's description walking out towards the glass sliding door. And there's probably some sort of indication that says that this was at a specific time. There's always been rumors that she called or texted people, or her and Bethany were texting. I don't know if those are true or not. I have no idea. But if they did, like I just saw somebody, that might be able to prove that, all right, she saw somebody walking this direction. We have a latent footprint going this direction, meaning it was one of the last steps left, because if it was the first one, it'd be bloodier. And so they're able to prove that he had it out at that time. That's all. The only thing they're trying to prove in the PCA is not that Bryan Kohberger stepped in blood. They're trying to prove that he left in that direction at a specific time because of the blood and how it was on this footprint heading towards the door. So, yeah. And it says, keep in mind, there could have been 5 different blood type mixed together. By the time they get to separate them into single gag order and place, could be on more, but can't discuss. That's true. That's absolutely true. He may have had more DNA mixed in there, but by the time they unmixed it, which I don't know how long that takes. So that could be true. That could be false. I'd have to ask a person that does that to figure out how long that process can take. But yeah, let's see. But yeah, I mean, this person brings out some weird stuff, talking about things that, Payne did this and Payne did that. I don't get it. I just don't. I don't get what the problem is in any of this. And Jesse, I know what you're saying. I've seen the document, as far as Jesse's claiming that there's a document out there that says K-bar with DNA on it. I think it said that we collected the K-bar with DNA on it, and it was referencing something. I can't remember what, but it wasn't the car. It was, I think it was referencing everything that they've collected. And I think that was referencing the sheath. I think they may, because it sounded like the sheath, like they were talking about the sheath. But I have to go back and find it. But when I read it, and I was like, yeah, this sounds like they're talking about the sheath. It may be something that's unknown, but man, if they found it, that'd be great, because I think that's another dagger in the Bryan Kohberger case, against him. Because obviously they're still moving forward with it. So it's not like they found somebody else's DNA on there or something that's exculpatory if there is something there found. Let's see. Daniel's welcome to read or use the info on what? I'm not sure. Came from the CC Moore interview. Oh, okay. Good deal. See, that's somebody that's an expert. So if CC Moore is saying that it may have taken time to separate those things, you're actually right. It could have taken time. And so is there a possibility there's other DNA in that, in that area? Maybe, that's awesome. Thank you, Nina, for pointing that out to me, because that does make sense. We didn't know everything that happened. When was this PCA written? Let's see, the 29th. No, that's something else. I was hoping that the case number would have it. Sometimes they do. I'd like the date, and then it'd be a code, date, and then which number it is in incident reports. So this is the 29th, 2022. So this is right when they arrested him. This is when they prepared this, or at least got it signed by the judge. When they find him, the 20th. So they had 9 days. Or when did they not find him? But was Moscow Police Department notified that Bryan Kohberger was the potential suspect in the crime, that he potentially matched the DNA on the sheath? Because for those that don't understand or know, that the IGG doesn't test Bryan Kohberger directly to the DNA on the sheath. All they do is they take the STR sample and convert it to like SNP, or maybe that's already converted, but they get the SNP sample, and what they do is they try to match that to certain peoples that are out there. So let's just say, we'll use me, for example. If I were to go to this genetic thing or whatever it was called and put in my stuff, and somebody wanted to track it down, I would have probably one person that was pretty high up there, right? So, well, I'll talk about mine. I've done mine before. I have an ancestry. I have the highest person that's populated on mine is a first cousin of mine. Which I do need to preface this, that my father, we don't know much about my father's father's side. And so, I know who he is, but I have no idea about his family or anything like that. Well, anyways, there are some people on there that I have no idea who they are because they come from a person who I never knew about. My father barely knew about. And so, with that being said, there's some people that populate there. So the first cousin of mine, I think that means we have the same grandparent, perhaps, something like that. So they would find that person's grandparents, or maybe it's great grandparents. I don't know. But let's just say it was great grandparents. They would find that person's great grandparents and then trace down the lineage of 2 generations and see which ones, the males, if there was DNA for a male, the males in that tree branch that is 2 generations down from that person. Now, if they have a cousin that's like 4th cousin, well, then you have to go back to grandparents that are like 5 times up. And so you have to go through all the families to point in one direction. And when they finally find that direction, they don't necessarily say, hey, this is your guy 100%. They say, hey, you might want to look into this person, because they don't test the DNA themselves. So they have, the law enforcement at that point has to get a DNA sample to test from Bryan Kohberger's to the DNA that was left on the sheath to then get a warrant. And they couldn't find his. Obviously, he'd been cleaning out. I think they said he was separating his trash and stuff like that. When did they know that? A lot of people think that police knew that before they arrested him. It may have been something that was discovered after the fact. Well, anyways, he was disposing his trash in neighbors' yards, things of that nature. And they couldn't find his DNA. But they found the DNA of his father's, and they were able to match that as the father of the suspect on the sheath to like 99.9999 million nines, and then there's an 8% or something like that. So with that being said, Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. I mean, you only had a shorter period amount of time. There's a lot longer of a case to be had after the fact, which is why I said that Bryan Kohberger screwed himself when he decided to waive the speedy trial. Because I knew once it came out that there was the IgG and that was what was used, I knew that they really didn't know who he was until then, and that their case really didn't start being built until the 20th, right? And I said this a long time ago, over a year ago, multiple, maybe even a year and a half ago is when I said that that's when they found out. A lot of people here are barely finding that out now or here in the last couple of months, but this is one of those things where I've told you guys, hey, this is what I think is going to happen, and yet these folks continue to still think I'm wrong. Well, anyways, I said this back then, and it ended up happening. And so 9 days, that's not a lot of time. So I think that they probably have way more of things afterwards, which, like I said, that's the reason why Bryan Kohberger shouldn't have waived his rights. I think they would have had more things available for him. I think they would have had the 3 DNAs still available, the unknown DNA, which are no longer unknown. You also had the phone pings. I'm not sure how those relate to GPS locations, and I would assume that would have probably already been done. But again, the reason why they were arguing the phone pings wasn't because they were trying to because they were trying to get the grand jury thrown out, saying, hey, they used information that's not 100% accurate for the grand jury and for the probable cause affidavit. So this should be thrown out. They should have gotten a warrant for this GPS, I guess, or something, or arrested. I don't know how she expected. It doesn't matter how it would have happened. They would have been trying to figure out a way to get around the system on this one. But yeah, I think he screwed himself by waiving that right. He allowed the prosecution to build a much stronger case against him. Much stronger case. All right, I'll answer a couple questions before we call it a show. Yeah, Jesse, I was aware of the documentation. I've been told about it a couple of times that, oh, they have the K-bar. But when I read it, it didn't really sound like that was the case for me. It sounds like they were referring to the sheath, but I could be wrong. Daniel, now that the trial date is set, do you think it will stick? 100%. I don't think this judge is playing around. I don't think he's playing around at all. What's the court document called? You're referring to the one with the K-bar or not? Man, that was a while ago. Let's see. You know, a lot of people have been telling me, well, I'll leave that to me. You know, tomorrow we're going to be having a members only. So members, be ready to ask your questions. We'll be going into it. I don't pull up other people's videos there, Jesse, not until I see what they are and who it's from. Because there's only certain people that I will bring up on the channel. Like, you know, these type of things with like Miss Karen here, I might bring up more if I keep seeing some folks kind of commenting the same kind of stuff. I might bring up them just to kind of weed them out so they can stop coming in if they see that I keep embarrassing them. Yeah, there are creators that want me to bring them up just so that they can get some sort of recognition, or that people start going over there and look at their stuff. I won't do it. You've written PCA. PCA is more of a formal document, government heading, etc. In my opinion, PCA is sealed. We have Exhibit A. Is that possible? No, I think that 19 pages is a lot of pages to put on a probable cause affidavit. So they probably have the PCA, and then on the PCA where it writes what happened or why you believe that this is the person, they probably says see Exhibit A, and this is the Exhibit A. Because I mean, I don't know how it is in Idaho, but you know, in Texas, your probable cause affidavit was, I think, a page and a half sometimes. I think you could get a second page. But many times you had to do something like this, where I had to put Exhibit A or Exhibit 1 or the attached document of PCA. So this is 100% common, at least when I was in law enforcement, that they would have that attached. Now, the actual PCA will have like charges and his name, date of birth, personal information about him, cell phone number, height, weight, eye color, things of that nature. And so I think maybe that's why they ended up keeping that sealed, because it was like a social security number. All that's personal. And this is what's the actual thing here. Why does it? Well, just because of that. The PCA says Exhibit A because it's probably attached to it. But, you know, a lot of people will say this ain't the PCA, this is Exhibit A. And what I say to that is, look at the last question here. Based on the information, I'm requesting an arrest warrant be issued for Bryan C. Kohberger. So in order to get a warrant, you have to have a probable cause affidavit. This is him asking for an arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger and for the murder counts and burglary count for the victims, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. And so this is his affidavit for probable cause. It may not be the exact PCA with all his stuff, but this is Payne's affidavit for probable cause. That's exactly what it is. So, let's see. Yeah. Thank you. I'm also sporting the Santa. Let's see. What's going on, Jeff? 100%. Always. I mean, I don't have to rock anything else other than facts, because it doesn't need this case don't need anything. I don't need to be a, conspiracy theorist to show that he's guilty or that he's been there. Daniel, there's a different DNA profile on it. I'd have to check this out because I'm not sure what you're referring to. Email it to me. Let's see. How's Blue? Blue's doing all right. I talked to him not too long ago. He's doing like a few jobs at a time. Me and him need to schedule something, but I'm also trying to get Jaime to get back on and do a little bit of an old school show. We'll see. All right. Yes. He sent me to me on email so I can actually see it and read it. And the only reason I'm not, I'll pull you up. The only reason I'm not pulling you up is because I think you're referring to a certain person's show, and I'm not sure about that person yet. I'm not sure about the last person either, but I didn't see anything that was really disrespectful. Not saying that this guy is. I don't know. I just have to go and look at it. I don't really watch a lot of stuff that is conspiratorial when it comes to the true crime. I'm probably, because of my former profession, I'm more evidence-based and facts, common sense, deduction of information to determine the most likely outcome. I've been right quite a bit. I've just been deducing things. Like I mentioned before, when Bryan Kohberger's car was seen on a camera at the gas station coming from a location that some would appear to be coming from out of town, that's when Moscow Police Department and the detectives started to search different areas, which told me that they didn't have a video of him leaving town, which obviously we found out that there wasn't. But even back then, I found I found a route that would have left from Bryan Kohberger, from the victim's house to outside of Moscow without getting on a camera. I found that out before when that video came out. That's when I told everybody. I was like, all right, so either he's in Moscow or he's left Moscow and he had an idea of the cameras and they don't have him leaving. Which was also when I was starting to think that this was probably a thrill kill or a serial killer. And the reason why I had thought that at that time was because it seemed like it was, the persons that were close to these folks were being cleared at a high rate. And so they had evidence. That's the first clue that they have some hardcore evidence. And it's probably the car, the DNA on the sheath, things of that nature. And so they were able to clear out these people because of the evidence that they had. So that told me either he was from there, or he was, or that he did some reconnaissance and got there without being seen on camera. And we did our best. We looked up the maps and we went through them to see if there was any routes, and There was one route that left south of that neighborhood that ended up being the route that Bryan Kohberger took. Daniel, as a judge, quashed all the defense motions so far. So far, he has. As far as anything new, I don't. Hold on, let me go check. I don't think there is anything new. Could be. Let's go all the way down to this. But I know that too far. Nah, it's still the same thing. Motionless appeal, Frank's motion stuff. It hasn't changed yet. If I find something out, I'll let you guys know. I'll reach out and see what my courthouse friend has to say. See if they are aware of anything. I'll bring it to you if I find anything out about that, or once I do. It wouldn't be the first time. I think it's been like 2 or 3 occasions where I've come out ahead of when it drops there on the Idaho website, where I've said, hey, this day, this time, this is what's going to happen. Whether it was Bryan Kohberger arguing that he wanted the judge to relook at the grand jury thing that they were wanting to get thrown out, and then also asking if they can get it going to to the Supreme Court, Idaho Supreme Court, and that was denied. That came out with that like months before that stuff popped up, especially the one that they were trying to get it to go to the Supreme Court. The last one also, not too long ago, when they denied the motion for the death penalty. I think I dropped that information about like 8 or 9 hours before it was dropped. So if I hear anything, I'll let you guys know. I'll ask though. I'll ask if there's been any word on it. See if there's any court docs that are just not being released yet that are public. They're just not in the on the website. Sometimes it takes some time to put them on there before they actually put them on. There's not usually something that's a secret or anything like that. It's just sometimes it takes time for it to populate on the website. Yeah, my email is drunkturkeyshow@gmail.com. There it is. Let's see. I think guilty and innocent wouldn't want to be blindsided at court with discovery my attorney didn't have. I think guilty and innocent would, but wouldn't want to be blindsided at court with discovery my attorney didn't have. Not sure where that was at. Maybe that wasn't towards me. Let's see. All right. Thank you. I'll look at that as soon as the show is over, Jesse. There's a new hearing scheduled on the summary tab by PK's name for 12/11/24. Let's go check that out. I never check that. That's the one thing I don't check. I just see if anything has dropped there. Man, there's so many damn things that have been dropped in this case. Oh, so many motions. It's not funny. Case summary. All right, I'll scroll all the way down. Oh. All right. So let's see. Motion hearing, yeah. And then another one on January 23rd. Interesting. And I see canceled are the motion to suppress. Motion in limine is also canceled. And this hearing is also, or this hearing schedulement is canceled. Pretrial conference is canceled. So we have the motion hearing, 2 of them, a lot earlier than, they wouldn't have another one until April. But look at this, motion hearing, pretrial conference, motion hearing, pretrial conference, canceled jury trial Oh, this is for, oh, you know what? These are all canceled for, those are canceled from Latol, I think. Let's see, Judge John. Yeah, these are from Latol County. Okay, so now they're going to redo those here. But, you know, I don't see the motion to, well, I guess that was what they put up earlier, right? Although that wasn't a hearing. That was just their motions, right? But where are their new motions for suppression, for motion in limine and the other stuff that was canceled through Judge? I see the motion hearings, but I don't, and the pretrial conference. And then we have two hearings scheduled, and then the jury trial. I don't see these motions anymore being brought at least up to court. Maybe those are just motions like this. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. So I have no idea what I'm looking at. I'm ignorant to this. I'm not going to lie. That's what I mean. I'm not calling people stupid when I say they're ignorant. What I'm saying is that you don't know what you don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I can tell that these that were canceled were from Judge. What I can't tell is, or what I don't know is, are these motions just motions that have already been entered in that were once canceled, or that are now have already been turned in, or are we going to eventually see these motions hearings? Maybe that's what December 11th is about. We'll see. Well, if that's live, we'll go live. Hopefully it's not anything that is too crazy. Daniel, any plans on streaming the trial? My job is probably going to take a big considerable part of that. I'm going to listen to it while I'm at work and stuff, and catch on to it when I can. My intention was also to go out there and at least get, be there for at least one part of the trial, whether it's the verdict or the beginning of the prosecution, or maybe in the beginning of the defense's orders. Because I feel that if I go there for the defense, it'll probably be a lot shorter. And we'll probably end up getting a verdict pretty soon, so I can probably go do both at the same time. I think that the prosecution is going to have a field day. I mean, have a lot of stuff to say. Let's see. All right, I'll answer just a couple more. Yeah, these are all the old ones. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll go look at this there, Jesse. I'll take a look at it. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank everybody for checking us out. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. Hey, if you have a theory that might stand up to everything that we go through and we can't debunk it, put in the comment section. I'm not trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Discourage anybody from commenting their opinions. If it's something that is different than mine, put it in there. We'll talk about it. If it's something that you're pretty heartstrung on, that this is the case, and I'll discuss it. I'll look at your theories. I'll bring them on. I'll say, all right, does this theory hold any water? And where is this water held at? Like, we'll go through it. Needless to say, I want to thank everybody here for tuning in. You guys have a great and safe weekend. I'll be back tomorrow for a members only show. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Hit that join button. If you don't see a join button in the description, there's a become a member link. Follow that, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.